Red Dead Online is an online multiplayer open-world action-adventure game released in 2019, originally bundled together with the iconic Red Dead Redemption 2. Following on from the financial Goliath that is GTA Online, developers Rockstar set out to provide another smash hit with its Western-themed counterpart. With Red Dead Online now its own standalone title, and with a number of years of updates under its belt, today we take a look to see what Red Dead Online has to offer its players in 2021, and whether it's worth it to posse up with a few friends to venture out into the Wild West, or if standing alone has led to the game buckling under its own knees. I'm Mitch Mannix, and today we take a look at Red Dead Online in 2021. Like with many of my reviews and first impressions, this video will be split into parts covering new player experience, open world and aesthetic, endgame and progression, and monetization. This look at the game is following on from over 250 hours with the online component of Red Dead specifically, so not much of a first impressions, but more of a state of the game, and if you as a player would get enough out of it considering it's now a standalone purchase. With that out of the way, let's get started. When first starting the game, just like with GTA Online, new players will be greeted with an introductory set of cutscenes, setting the scenes for your silent protagonist and providing some motivations for your escapades in the West. I personally have never really been a fan of the silent protagonist in the Rockstar multiplayer offerings, as they clash so hard with the frequently very emotive and animated NPCs and only really serve to make your chosen avatar come across as a bit of a psychopath when staring stone-faced at everyone around him or her. The first hour of the game will see you complete a number of introductory missions introducing you to the basic mechanics of the game, including setting you up with a horse and explaining the camp system, after which you will be put into the true open world with other players. Early game typically involves completing a series of quests which follow on from the plotline introduced during the tutorial missions. These 13 missions, along with providing some extra experience and funds for starting out, also highlights the game's honour system, as some of the 13 missions can only be completed when considered honourable or dishonourable respectively via the system. The honour system in Red Dead Online, like a number of things, feels underutilised. Outside of gating off certain missions, the honour system does not really lead to any real shift in gameplay, outside of some side quests providing alternative objectives and determining how some NPCs interact with your player character. Honour can be gained by stopping to help NPCs out in the world, choosing to spare hideout leaders, as well as smaller things like throwing fish back or being nice to your horse. Honour can be decreased by murdering local livestock, killing instead of capturing bounties, and the most effective method being treating Red Dead Online as one giant rampage mission and going postal on the local population. Another way to quickly rank up or down within the honour system is to use the premium currency, but more on that a little later in the video. In the past, the new player experience hit a bit of a wall after finishing the Land of Opportunity quest content, as the major roles in the game are locked behind the need to have the required amount of gold bars, the game's premium currency, to unlock them, and would require a lengthy grind of the stranger missions to obtain the required amount. However, the recent Blood Money content update has given new players a far more interesting alternative in its free mission sets to get players set up to be able to dive into one of the roles of the game, those being Bounty Hunter, Naturalist, Collector, Trader, and Moonshiner. I personally think that Rockstar should do more to point new players exclusively to this content following on from the introductory missions, as whether intentional or not, Rockstar have made the new player experience far more seamless and engaging. You even get treasure maps every 5 levels to seek out for nice money and gold rewards. Overall, the first few hours of Red Dead Online, providing you weigh up all the options with the starter content, does well at setting things up and getting the ball rolling for new inhabitants of the West, but also feels slightly without direction or breadcrumbs to lead the way to unlock the more substantial roles and activities. It goes without saying that you would be hard pressed to find a fan of open world games that has not played or heard of the games created by Rockstar. Since 2001, the developer has been constantly raising the bar of what's possible when creating interactive, alive-feeling open worlds for its players. The fictionalized world of Western states featured in Red Dead Online also brings the same attention to detail and polish the developers are known for, albeit a bit scaled down slightly from the single-player offering. Small things such as shopkeeper NPCs commenting on how long it's been since you visited their store, to the seemingly endless amounts of reactive dialogue on show throughout, does a lot to make the player feel immersed. The NPC AI is also fantastic, both at providing a cover finding and flanking adversary during combat, but also holds so much depth that whole spontaneous events can play out just bouncing off the reactive and sometimes hilarious decision making of the AI. The land itself is absolutely stunning when it comes to its overall visuals, with some of the most incredible looking vistas and natural beauty I have ever seen in a video game. In the earlier hours, playing small tasks will feel much less monotonous, as simply riding through this breathtaking scenery is a joy in itself. The most unbelievable attention to details, such as the items strewn around a cabin telling the tale of its recent inhabitants, goes a long way to make you feel connected to the world whilst playing through online. Characters are voiced by a stellar cast, and overall the open world itself, along with its aesthetic, is one of the main reasons I find myself returning to the game. As for when it comes from taking a break from your personal day-to-day, the world Rockstar have built here can really make you feel like a gunslinger in the West. But open world multiplayer games cannot count on pretty visuals alone, and unfortunately, when looking past the incredible visuals and open world of the game, the cracks start to appear. As previously mentioned, there are 5 main roles or jobs in Red Dead Online to provide the bulk of the content and progression. These 5 roles do provide quite a lot of variety, with the exception of the Trader and the Moonshiner role, that share a very similar gameplay loop of creating items to collect product, then completing delivery missions to buyers to cash in. The Bounty Hunter role is quite self-explanatory, tracking down and capturing or killing a range of targets. The Naturalist centres around seeking out ever-elusive animals, all the way up to the legendary variants, with a nice spin in place, with the 2 alternative factions representing the game's mode for either animal-loving or relentless hunter sides. The Collector role is as simple and monotone as it sounds, with a massive amount of collectibles to hunt down, never really advancing beyond that concept. Progression along with your player level and loadout are tied to ranks within these job roles, with more interesting items and perks being unlocked as the player progresses through each one's respective ranks. Additional add-ons to your camp as well as the Moonshiner Shack, coupled with unlocks such as the metal detector for the Collector role, does add a little as you progress, but overall, the vast majority of the tasks contained within these roles does become very repetitive. Filling up your pelts with crypts to set up a delivery quest, riding for hours on end picking up cards and coins for cashing in collections is fine for newer players, but since Red Dead Online's content drops are so incredibly few and far between compared to the much more successful GTA Online, these roles can quickly develop from interesting outings to mindless busy work, partially also due to the lack of public events and other off-the-cuff activities available in the open world. The Bounty Hunter role was expanded in December 2020 and does make for some of the most engaging role-based content, but a lot of that I feel is to do with the fact that it centres around combat as opposed to ticking boxes for deliveries or collections. Given the frequent updates to the GTA counterpart, it's easy to feel quite justifiably like Red Dead Online has been left in the dust, as for such a gripping and detailed environment, the amount of interesting and worthwhile things to get involved in feels incredibly light. I mentioned before about times I've returned to the game after taking some time away, and even with months between play sessions, very quickly find myself drawn back to the same few tasks I was doing, simply due to the fact that there are no new and interesting activities. As a title that, like its GTA counterpart, follows the games as a service model, it does not feel like Rockstar believe in the longevity of Red Dead Online. Of course, new players will have a blast leveling through their Bounty Hunter role, working to become a well-respected and wealthy trader, and taking in the amazing open world, but for players who have played through the content, most of which by now is years old, I can't help feeling like someone sat in a restaurant waiting for the next course, but the owners are starting to lock up and turn off the lights. The most recent update after quite a long content drought was the Blood Money update, which did not add any additional roles, and boiled down to repackaging the Stranger missions and other already established gameplay. The open world multiplayer again feels underutilized, given its capacity to house so many players. Outside of fighting off potential griefers when delivering cargo and a couple of camps to clear together, there isn't really any lucrative content to bring players that aren't grouped up from the get-go a reason to band together or go at it head to head. There are PvP game modes and some more instance events to run, however the amount of variety pales in comparison to most other titles, and even with adding the spice of PvP can lack longevity and does not have any real progression system of its own. The ability cards and weapons can also cause some issues with balancing in the PvP modes. My advice for anyone looking to jump into Red Dead Online would be, as it stands, not to anticipate the same kind of pace and attention taken by other developers when handling live service games, and see this one as having more of a definitive endpoint. Of course, there's still the possibility that Rockstar will turn things around for Red Dead Online, but for anyone in the community, or that has followed the game, will know, we've had our expectations dashed far too many times for any real hope for that to remain. Ultimately, there'll still be those people that will grind out levels and cash simply because they want to be high level and rich, but when there's nothing to buy or new challenges to reach, I personally begin running out of steam and ultimately begin to look elsewhere. There is a huge amount of fun to be had in Red Dead Online, either solo or with a few friends, and given that the standalone is priced down due to its segregation from the main game, in my opinion, is well worth the cost of entry. But for those thinking that are like its Grand Theft counterpart, it will be constantly brimming with new and exciting updates and content drops, will sadly be disappointed. The monetization in Red Dead Online sticks quite close to the concept of GTA Online, and thankfully is far less aggressive and insidious, an eventuality that unfortunately is probably why Rockstar don't seem to care about the game very much. Players can buy gold bars for real money, to use for all sorts of items and cosmetics, as well as unlocking the job roles in the game. Items can be sold exclusively for gold bars, as well as being sold for in-game cash, with the option to use gold bars if preferred. Now it's here where Rockstar have inadvertently created a rather strange dynamic. Gold of course is quite challenging to earn in any real significant amount due to it being the primary moneymaker in the game, and will lead to hours of grinding or cracking open the wallet to manage. However, due to the lack of content being added to the game, the time added to acquire gold bars without paying real money for it actually helps to pad out the game somewhat. It's a bit of a bittersweet scenario. As with other titles, the allure of the cash shop to buy premium currency is bolstered by the desire to purchase or participate in the newest content. With Red Dead Online, the pace is so slow, if moving at all, that running content to stack up gold to buy the naturalist role or a cool gun skin feels achievable without the fear of missing out on other opportunities, as well, there simply isn't any. As opposed to making vehicles cost tens of millions of dollars and paying out only a fraction of that in its hardest content, Red Dead Online does not have a same predatory feel like GTA Online does. In Red Dead, I've spent the odd gold bar here and there, but never have I felt like I did in GTA Online, when the bar for entry for things like the Doomsday heist easily stacks up to millions of startup virtual dollars just to give it a go. Don't get me wrong, gold will still take a fair while to accumulate, but for me at least, it did not sour the experience quite like the model set up for GTA Online, or with some other multiplayer open worlds. Coming to a conclusion on how I feel about Red Dead Online was a bit of an emotional rollercoaster. I love the game's world, the survival features of crafting and gathering, riding across its various biomes and simply existing in that world is an incredible experience. It's just such a shame that Rockstar couldn't provide enough to keep players busy in its open world for the long term. I feel like I really want an excuse to continue to play the game after over 250 hours. So instead of looking at it as a letdown of a live service game, I try to think of it as a great open world sandbox to grab a few friends and explore together. I've lost count of the amount of epic and hilarious spontaneous moments that come out of playing with friends through Red Dead Online. For those looking to buy the game, but are confused by the reviews, remember that sometimes they make a lot more sense with context. Are long-standing players justified to feel disenfranchised for amassing thousands of hours in in-game dollars to simply repeat the same content over and over? Yes. Are those that praise the game wrong for their views because of this? Definitely not. But if you do go in with the right expectations and the knowledge that unlike its big brother, you may not be riding off into the sunset for the long term, Red Dead Online is a great pickup at its lower price for some beautifully presented gunslinging adventures. And that's my look at Red Dead Online in 2021. Are you a new or an old player of Red Dead Online? Or maybe you're just thinking about buying the game? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you to anyone who's made it this far in the video. If you're into MMOs or massively multiplayer games in general, check out the videos on screen. Please consider subscribing to the channel to be notified of all the new content going forward. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.